game number 30 of Morphy's Games of Chess. The Lowenthal-Morphy match continues with the 11th match game held on August 12th, 1858. That's right, folks. August 12th, 1858, a long time ago. All right, well, Lowenthal has the white pieces. He launches the e-pawn. And Morphy with c5, the Sicilian defense. And we got our first footnote, the only recorded instance of Morphy adopting the Sicilian. He chooses an old form of it. Folks, I have the book Morphy's Games of Chess right here. I refer to it as the Sacred Scrolls. Here it is right there. I'm not making it up. And if they're saying it's an old form, I mean, we're talking about back in 1858. And they were saying it was an old form. I mean, so this is ancient. This is ancient, right? But anyway, let's go. Let's get into it. We'll pick up some important things to take from this game. So Lowenthal takes out the knight, and Morphy plays e6. Okay, d4 by Lowenthal, and they trade on d4. They trade the pawns. Knight comes to d4. Centralized knight for Lowenthal. And now Morphy with the queen knight out. All right. Lowenthal jumps the knight to b5. Now, just again, I talked about this in other videos. If white takes here, black takes back with the b pawn, and now he has another pawn towards the center. He has more central control. I mean, it's known in modern theory to be very good for black. And, you know, if you're white, you don't want to play this way. But you know what? I said it once, I'll say it again. If you're white and you're playing against someone under 2,000, anything's good, folks. You go for it. You could do this. You take them right out of book. You know, if your opponent happened to book up on the Sicilian, now all of a sudden he's got to fly blind here. He's just got to improvise. And if you're the better tactician, the better attacker, the better chess player, you're going to take him out. All right, so that's my take on it. So if you're playing an inexperienced player, you could do things like this. If you're playing a master, you know, forget it. Maybe, you know, they're gonna show you why that's not a good idea. They're gonna prove it to you. All right, but anyway, there you go. A little side note. So I digress. So Lowenthal takes the knight to b5. All right, and Morphy hits the knight with a6. Now get a load of this. Here's what the notes again. Take it with a grain of salt, because this was back in the day, folks, over 150 years ago. But the old masters come up with the line. They say that this is the only move, right? We're talking the Sicilian defense. Who knows? There's so much modern theory, so much theory developed today up to this point. Who knows, right? But the old masters, their opinion was that knight to f6 is the only good move here, when the game may turn by transposition into the variation analyzed by Chigorin and others some years ago. Continuing, queen knight out for white. Black would pin it. And now they got one of two lines. The first simple line is the check right here, right? We'll do that first. The check. King comes up attacking the knight along with the bishop. Okay, so now that knight's hanging. Well, then they give, let's see, I think the bishop, they give, this the line they give. They did the bishop out, and then you hit it like this. You hit it with the pawn. Now you got two pieces hanging, and they just leave it at that. That's where they finish. Now, I don't like leaving things up in the air like that, but let's look. You know, the knight could take the bishop with check, or it could leap to f5 with check, but let's just do this quick, real simple, right? You take this guy with check. All right, now that brings the rook over to the open C file. That's where you want that rook, right? Rooks belong on the open files, folks. And then to get out of this bishop, if you haven't noticed, the bishop and the pawn on e4 is hanging. See that? Because let's just say he pulls back there. You see the knight again, folks. The c3 knight she's pinned over there. She could do nothing. She's not defending that pawn at all. All right, so what he does is he pins it. See, he moves his bishop out to safety on g5, and at the same time he pins the knight to black's king. Right? So there you go. That's it. I think black gets a simple game right here. Good game. It could be anybody's. It's going to be a fight, right? All right, you want to take, this is what Shredder likes. You bust up those pawns. You give the bishop for the, well, it's two knights against the bishops. But the queen side of white is busted up. Look at those double C pawns, isolated A pawn. And who knows? It's a game. Look at the evaluation, the engine, folks. The engine saying it's under a pawn, right? Under a pawn. Who knows? There's actually saying black's got a slight edge of 0.67. How about that? Under a pawn, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But there, we'll conclude with that. That's one line, right? That's one sideline. The knight, after the pin, they give this as being one line, the check. The other is to bring the bishop out first to f4. That's what they give, okay? They give bishop f4. And just like Shredder had suggested, they give this for black, piling up on the c3 knight. All right, now, if you hadn't noticed, the bishop f4 not only supports this guy, this check, but now he's supporting the knight fork of the king and the rook on a8. King moves over, right? Now, he doesn't grab the rook yet. The old masters, they give this. You help defend the knight on c3, I guess, and you attack the knight on e4, the black knight. So they give this, defend the knight. White castles getting the c3 knight out of the pin. Look at this now, just throwing an insignificant move. Did you see this? Look, now the knight can move. And wham, look at that. You lose your queen, only square. You lose your rook. All right, black gets the queen back, but he's down 2 rooks, folks, right? Because then this one's coming, see? You lost the other one. Now look at it. White's up 2 rooks. Need we say more, right? Disaster. So that's what's being threatened right there after this. After the castling long, you got that threat. Okay. So black chops off the bishop. This is all given by the old masters, folks. They knew what was going on, all right? Now look at this move. You got to love them. Look at this. Queen to e7, right? All right, let's grab the rook over here. Why not, right? I'll show you why. Look at this. From out of nowhere on the long diagonal down to a3. Check. King has nowhere to go, folks. Can't escape because of the knight. Only square, b1. Here comes the knight with the check. King over. Good night. Good night, Irene. Checkmate. How do you like that one, huh? Look at that. Queen and knight. Beautiful. The combination. The power they have. They work so beautifully together. They coordinate. Look at this. All right, so now the queen would have to save the game, prolong it. You'd have to sack the queen. And then, I don't know, you go from there, right? Let's just look at the evaluation. I think black's winning this one. They give a check here. I know this is quick, right? But look at this. You're up almost 5 pawns, right? I mean, forget about it. Let's just leave it at that. Need we say more? All right, so anyway, we go back. This is what's being threatened, folks. So after queen e7, no way can you grab the rook over here. You got to wake up. Come on, dummy up now. The old masters, they give the queen. I mean, here's Shredder. Maybe that's possible, right? You protected along the rank. No check over here now because the queen, right? All right, that's the obvious. But I'll give you, we could be analyzing this one for quite a while. So let's just conclude with what the old masters, the line they give. They said king up. And now they conclude with rook over, so the knight can't take it. And now it's a good idea. You put your rook opposite the enemy king, all right? So who knows? What happens here? Who knows? Let's give the analysis. Let's look at it. It's actually saying black's a little better. A little better. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. It's even under a pawn. So now it's close. It's about a pawn advantage. I mean, at this point, black's got to work to get his king rook in the game. It could. Who knows, folks? It's about a pawn and change in black's favor. But this is what the old masters gave up to this point. Now look at this. There's even an asterisk here. Take away this rook move, right? And look at what it says. These moves, with the exception of rook to b8, occurred in a correspondence game, 1906, between the present writer, which is Philip W. Sargent, and Mr. J.J. O'Hanlon, now Irish champion. So, I mean, we're going all the way back, folks. There's a footnote, lost to history, huh? Rest in peace, J.J. O'Hanlon, Irish champion at one point. So there it is, right? Interesting stuff. But now, also it concludes this little side note saying that some of the sub-variations are equally fascinating. Folks, we're dealing with the Sicilian, right? I mean, again, it's just millions of ways it could go, right? But I want to be thorough. That's the note in the book right here that I hold in my hands. Interesting lines. Couple of nice checkmate with the queen and knight, and also that nice tactic where white won both rooks, right? All right, so let's get back to the actual game. So we go all the way back, right? And it was all started after this move by Lowenthal. The old masters in the notes say that knight to f6 is the only good move here. Modern theorists, I don't know. What do you say to that? All right, let's see what Morphy does now. Pawn up, hitting that knight. All right, the knight, as you guessed, like Shredder, jumps in with the check. Morphy chops him off with the bishop. All right, they trade on d6. And now Morphy moves the queen to e7. Get out of here, you. Get out of here. Chase that white queen out. Or let's even, if you trade, you only speed up black's development. See? You develop with the piece. Take back with the piece. All right. But he doesn't do that. Now, look, I'm going to read another note here after queen to e7. Morphy has no intention of letting his queen bishop, or the queen pawn, I should say. Morphy has no intention of letting his queen pawn be kept back, as he kept back Paulson's in games 11, 14, 15, 17. It is, of course, no use white playing bishop to f4 because pawn up, and now, folks, now you got the queen and the bishop hanging, so if he takes here, no, you don't take this way. You just dropped your pawn. Come on, folks. Come on, it's too early for the jokes, right? You got to take back again, speeding up your development, and he's got to move this guy, right? So, I mean, black gets a fine game. That's another way to go, right? White has the bishop here, but black's even. I mean, it's even Steven here, right? What's the analysis on this one? Ah, come on, look. Plus 0.07. I mean, come on. Whatever. You pull it back here. All right, forget about it, folks. It's an even game. If you're black, this is great for black. If you could take the black pieces and by move 10 be equalized, forget it. This is great. All right, so you don't want to play like that. Okay? Now, again, to touch on that with Paulson and Morphy in the New York Chess Congress, right? They had Morphy versus Paulson in the final round. And, I mean, if you haven't seen those games, check it out. But Morphy exploited the fact that Paulson allowed Morphy to keep back this D pawn. And it, like, crippled Paulson's development. The bishop couldn't come out, which kept the queen rook in the game. I mean, he was all tied up. And Morphy, I think, won 3 out of the 4 games. So he really took advantage of Paulson like that. So Morphy knows the deal. He doesn't want to fall victim to it here against Lowenthal. So he's willing to trade queens. But Lowenthal keeps the queen on the board. He retreats, and now Morphy developed the piece. Knight to f6. Now, if he takes here, you hit the queen, and then maybe you win this one. You win the e4 pawn, right? There's Shredder saying this, but either way, right? Somebody say, you know, you take here, well, he takes here, right? You come back. And you give up the wing pawns for the one center pawn. Lasker used to say that the center pawn's worth a little more because it controls the center where all the action is. But it's a whole other game in itself. Lowenthal doesn't take the pawn on g7 with the queen. What he does is he defends his e4 pawn. Okay, and now here we got Morphy playing d5. Little footnote, it says Morphy himself said he ought to have played d6, I guess to keep this pawn back from booting the knight. But, be that as it may, he plays d5, and now Lowenthal hits him with d5. Morphy jumps the knight to h5, attacking the queen, and the queen moves over to f3. So now he's attacking the knight. They're going tit for tat here. And Morphy protects him. Okay, he protects the knight with g6. But Lowenthal will not be denied. He throws the pawn up. And he attacks the knight, which has nowhere to go except here, right? Now, if he goes here, the notes say after queen to g7, black gets a desperately bad game, as white can continue queen to f6. It's like those dark squares are weak. Now after g6 being played, those dark squares, white could exploit them. And sure enough, if you do this, if you're dumb enough to go in and trade the queens, well, now where's your knight going to go, right? He's toast. That pawn's going to gobble him up, right? So you can't trade. And then if you do something like you try to defend the knight, right? Well, here comes the other guy on the dark squares. They're piling up, right? And if you want to try to protect that guy, again, you can't trade. The knight has nowhere to go, right? If you try to protect him, well, now you're walking right. You're putting the knight in a pin now. So you're tying your pieces up either way. You put the king there, the queen. I mean, you're tying yourself up. So it's really not the way you want to go. So for this reason, right? For this reason, do you see what Morphy does? This guy, something else. What does he do? He throws the knight and he takes the pawn, the queen knight, coming to the defense of his brother over there, right? Attacking the queen. No sweat, Lowenthal drops the queen back to e2, now attacking the e5 knight. And now both knights are hanging, right? So what would you do here? What would you do? Well, I'll tell you what Morphy does. He figures I'm gonna lose a knight. Might as well get another pawn for it. So the queen knight kamikaze takes 2 pawns out. All right, he gives its life, but he saved the brother on h5, right? So now you get 2 pawns for the knight. Now a knight's worth 3 pawns, kids. So it's really it's like he's gambiting in a sense, right? Now get a load of this. Morphy style, right? Gambit, sacrificing, right? Here he is, e5 now. Pushing that pawn up. He's got the 2 pawns for the knight. And these 2, the compensation are the 2 center pawns. I mean, if you want 2 extra pawns, you want them to be center pawns like this with a middle game to still fight out, because they control all the key squares. And not only that, did you see what happened, folks, with that e5 pawn push? The bishop on c8, attacking the queen, right? So the queen can't go here, the pawn, right? Can't go here because of the queen. All right, Lowenthal throws the check in. Morphy develops the bishop now, okay? Lowenthal backs the queen to b3. Okay, so now we have Morphy pushing ahead with the pawn. Now he's hitting the knight, the c3 knight, but get a load of this. Lowenthal leaves it there. He creates a bigger threat. He attacks the rook on a8, taking a pawn, winning a pawn. Morphy, all right, fine with that. He's giving up another pawn. He develops by castling, now linking the rooks up. So he's kind of got a lead in development here, folks, but he's given a lot. I mean, now, remember, he had 2 pawns for the knight. Well, white won back another pawn on b7. So now he gave up the knight for a pawn. So now it's, the material. Can he make something of it? We're going to see now. Look at this. The knight comes in, attacking the queen. He moves the queen up to d6. So now we have something very interesting. Look, it looks like there's a threat. Okay, Lowenthal brings the bishop to g2, and they give him an exclamation point there. Now watch this though. It looks like Let me make sure Shredder's not on. Okay, it's not. Because I don't want to spoil it for you. What if you played a bishop here, forking the queen and the knight? Now it looks like you're going to win a piece, right? Do you see what happens? I mean, yeah, he could go here and help defend it. That's true. But do you see what the better move for white is? Think of this. This could happen in your game. How about this one, folks? You just take that guy, right? Queen takes, whammo. Knight fork. King moves, and there you go. You get your piece back. How about that? Oh, great. The phone now, folks. Give me a second here. Excuse me. All right, folks. So, again, forgive me. So, anyway, we saw that beautiful tactic, right? Got to watch those tricky knights. All right, so anyway, now keep this in mind because this plays a little bit into this variation. I want to show you what's going on. Now, in the game, right, after Lowenthal's bishop to g2, look at this. Morphy, e4, right? Now, wait, oh, Shredder wants to jump in and tear me up. Hold on a second now, you. Go back. That's a good move there by Shredder. Okay, but anyway, look at this, folks. Now, again, you got the pawn, e4 by Morphy, right? It's hanging. So can't you just take it? Well, now you pin that guy. See that? And, folks, do you notice now, for instance, even if he, I don't know, take Shredder, for example. Let's put him on now, all right? We use him. Okay. So there you go. Now the tactic works, folks. Why does it work? Because there's no knight check, because the rook is here on the open e-file. See that? It changes, right? It changes everything. So just so you can see, sometimes if your combination doesn't work, well, you tweak it. You know, you try to force it. Look at this. And if you can get it, you get it. Now, if he plays this, right, you got this move. All right, he pins the bishop on c6. I guess you can take, right, because if you take here, the bishop's still pinned, right? But I guess now what ends up happening, okay, he gets out of that, right? He gets out, and you're going to have to sack the exchange, because now once you move the queen somewhere, right, I don't know, pull it back somewhere, right, you lose the bishop on c6, right? So, because the bishop on e4, the white bishop's not pinned anymore. So, all right, you give up the exchange for a bishop and pawn, right? Not bad, not bad. And you got the white king in the center. And at this point, it actually does give black is up quite a bit, almost 2 pawns. I think he's down the exchange, right? Pawns are equal. He's down the exchange. But he's got the white king in the center of the board. Looks pretty dangerous. He's not fully developed yet. He can't castle, so the queen rook is going to take a while to get in the game. May never get in the game. I mean, something like this, heck. It could be curtains for black soon. I mean, for white soon. They like this move, huh? They're going to bring that bishop to g4, I guess. Very awkward here. Look at this. He's going to win back the exchange already. Let's say if he moves here. Why? Let's see. There you go. Checkmate, right? So, he's got to sack it. Sack the exchange. Give it back, right? And now you get the queen coming to save him. But look, why would you trade queens? White's the one under the gun. So if you, the black king is safe. Why trade and go into an end game where now it's probably going to be a draw? The whole game slows down. The king trapped in the center of the board is irrelevant, right? Look at that. You win a little pawn over there. Could be all you need. We're just throwing this fast. Look at this. Here you go. Attack c2. You could even maybe win that, but he's on the ropes, folks. He's on the ropes. Coming back, threatening mate. Why give him a chance, you know? Now you're really opening up that D file. Attack the rook. Goes from bad to worse. Who knows? It could have went a little different, of course. We got just making the moves quick. Yeah, it says right here the evaluation. The evaluation is +8 pawns for black. He's up 8. So I mean, that's a pretty significant lead if you ask me, right, folks? Let's see how it finishes. Let's just see the combination here. Look at this. He's going to take this guy. Is that right? Is that correct? Takes here. And you go into an end game, right? Go into an end game all over, folks. It's all over. Do we really have to play this out? Let's get back to our game, right? Queen against rook. And black's up 2 pawns, too. So anyway, there you go. That's one little way it could go. I'm sure there's better moves. But, again, I think the fact that white king is in the center is definitely worth the exchange for black. All right, so there you go. There's what could happen, right? This is what's trying to shape up here. So that white cannot take the e pawn right here. He can't take it, folks. So what does he do? Just like Shredder, he plays the pawn up. C4 is played by Lowenthal. He knows not to grab that E4 pawn. So now what we got, move 20, right, folks? Move 20, yes. Okay, C4. All right, Morphy cements in his E4 pawn, right? Plays F5. Okay, so now we got the queen coming back. Look at Lowenthal. Wants to trade queens. Why not, right? He's the one up material. Morphy doesn't want it. He gets out of the way, but Lowenthal, relentless, coming after. Give me a queen trade. Come on, let's get this done. But here, Morphy blocks, and Moroxy gives in the notes. Maybe the best thing was to just trade, and there you go, king up, and then the knight retreats to safety, and there you go. Maybe that was the better thing to do. I think it'll still say that white's a little better. Okay, white's maybe even a whole lot better, almost up +3. But who's to say? That was Moroxy's recommendation at this point. Morphy, understandably, doesn't want to trade those queens. And now look at this. Lowenthal, queen to C7. Where can the queen go now, right? Well, just like Shred is showing, Morphy brings the queen to G7, and there you go. He chops it off. Now, folks, so now if he takes with the king, do you see what happens? Do you see what happens? Knight to C7, another knight fork. This time over here on C7, attacking the rook, threatening to win the exchange, and attacking the unprotected bishop on C6. I mean, on the E6, right? So, like, either way, he moves this guy to safety, he loses that guy, right? If he tries to defend, I don't even know. What can he even do? He can't. He tries to go over here, folks, right? You still win the exchange. So that is why Morphy takes with the knight, see? To protect his bishop on E6. Because at first look, I said, why move this knight coming back, and then he takes like this with the knight, and then only repositions the knight on H5. So I was thinking, why doesn't he just take with the king, so he doesn't have to waste a move like that, burn a tempo, bringing it back to H5? But it has its purpose, folks. You got to look at these knight forks, tricky knight forks. I'll tell you, kids, they get you every time. And they still get me sometimes. But I tell you what, it's like once you got a knight, see how the tactics come into play. The knight fork posted, the knight up in enemy territory, and you're vulnerable. You see what could happen to you? You don't like those knights well posted in enemy territory, I'll tell you, you get nervous. All right, so Morphy takes back with his knight. And after this, let's see, that was move 24, right? So there you go. Knight takes queen, and now you got the knight coming over here, harassing the queen rook. Queen rook moves over to attack the knight. C5 is played. Now that knight's cemented in. All right, so here we go. We got, like I said, Morphy puts the knight back onto H5. And Lowenthal cements that knight in. He helps to support the C5 pawn with B4. Maybe he's going to attack the B pawn with bishop to B2. Who knows, right? So now we get king up. And here we go. Lowenthal castles. Now, what was this king move? King F7. Well, look at that. Maybe Morphy, I don't know. Maybe he was anticipating Lowenthal castling, right? Now, look at this. He plays this sneaky move. G5. Just like before, he plays E4, and the bishop could have chopped off that pawn, right? Well, what about now? The queen bishop could chop off this one. What do you think, folks? Why do you think that king moved to F7? So now if that was the case, he's baiting him right in. Look at this. Attacking down the G file now, right? And you get some crazy. Now, I looked with Shredder. I was looking at this. And I think white still comes out on top. But I want to show you a couple of cool tactics I think are worth knowing. Look at this. Now, if he moves back, you see the knight coming in. And now they're piling up on this one. You see that? So he brings this guy back to protect. And look at Shredder. Look. You chop this one off, because now the bishop, it's like the brother is helping him out. See, one guy's helping out the other guy. See, he's protecting his bishop on G2. He's shielding him, right? But it still falls to this. You take, and then you push the pawn, because now this guy is pinned on G3, right? So you win anyway. Isn't that something else? I love that. I love it. Look. You team up on the bishop on G2. He tries to shield him. No dice. Look at that. Right? So anyway, that falls. But, I mean, even now, white still seems to have an advantage. He still seems to have an advantage. But anyway, I wanted to show you that tactic, okay? And then we go back. There's even, on this, he could play the pawn up. Shredder, I think, ended up liking that better. And we get into things that are similar to the game. We get into some similar things. So we'll leave it at that, okay? We'll investigate that line because it's very similar to what we end up having. Watch this. So Morphy with G5. Now Lowenthal doesn't chop it off. He brings the rook to D1, attacking this guy, right? So now you got Morphy playing. After rook to D1, Morphy brings his king rook to protect it. Brings the king rook to protect it. And it says Morphy afterwards suggested perhaps just to play D3. But the old masters give F3 seems a significant answer. Right? So, kind of breaks up those pawns. So, there you go. That's in the notes. So, Morphy, maybe it was best he played his rook over to protect the D pawn. And now Lowenthal feels it's safe enough to grab this guy. Okay, Morphy goes over, attacks that one, right? Now, he didn't move the thing. He didn't move the bishop over here. He pushed the pawn to protect him, right? Now, Morphy with a rook lift. Right? He brings the rook lift, but even now there's another note in the book. Now pawn to D3 should have been played. Is that any different? Let's see. Let's see what the difference. I don't know if there is any really, right? After that, what if he plays this now? Is that bad? I mean, look, you hit. Okay, because if you do that, Now, with that bishop moving, right, the dark square bishop gets off the line, the G-file. Now that bishop on G2, his brother over there is once again pinned. And you could exploit it like this. Now, whether that's even, it still looks like White's still winning here, but you do get the piece back at least. Right, he goes back here, you take him. So who knows, right? Looks like White's still up here. But anyway, they say that this could be played now. That's the old masters. Just a little difference, the little change here from the other position. All right, so anyway, Morphy plays the rook lift instead. Okay, and he gives up his D pawn. All right, he gives up the D pawn. Let me take Shredder off for now. So now look at this. Now they're doubling up over here. Now the two rooks double up. He's looking to sack the exchange and win that bishop. Okay, looking to win that bishop. And let's just say, for argument's sake, let's do this. Wait, let's put the engine on. Right, say he just does something like this, insignificant, right? All right, so he attacks him. Here comes the knight. All right, you win your piece back, I guess. He comes in, he gets the fork. All right, he takes there, you take there. Comes down, wants to harass you on the back rank. There you go. Now the king wants to unpin that bishop, because you know knight to f4 is coming, and there'll be two piled up on the bishop. For instance, useless move. See that he comes. Oh, he even pushes the pawn. You pile up that way. All right, so you got to. That's a little tactic to know, folks. When a piece is pinned, if you could bring more, reinforcements, you bring them over to attack, right? Well, I should say not reinforce. That's the defense. But you go on the attack, right? You pile up on that guy that's pinned. All right, anyway. I got the terminology wrong, but you know what I'm saying here, right? So it looks like, it still looks like White's got the edge. He's up 3 points, over 3, almost 3.5 pawns. Probably because of the C pawn over here, that passed pawn. Right? He's up the exchange. He's got that dangerous C pawn, the protected passed pawn. So anyway, who knows? But these are some ideas going on. Right? Here comes the pawn push. All right. I'm thinking he's willing to sacrifice the exchange even. Okay, so what happens? What is let's see. What is after queen rook to G8? Yep, the knight goes in just like Shredder wanted. Okay. So Morphy sacks the exchange at this point. He sacks it. Pawn takes. Now you got rook takes. All right, so he wins a pawn there. Okay. And now, let's see. After the rook takes pawn, we got the king getting out of the pin, right? Getting that bishop out of the pin, because knight to f4 is coming, just like in the other line. Whether it even matters, let's even see something here. Right? He brings the king up. Well, the knight goes where it wants to be. And now the bishop has its one square that it could run to. Right? F1. So here we go. We'll go into the Morphy game. All right, they're saying that Shredder wanted the knight to go back to D5, but Morphy gives the check instead. Okay, so the king has 1 or 2 squares. Now, if he goes here, folks, he'll get nowhere, right? We just keep checking him back and forth, right? If he just keeps going, we keep checking him like this. We just keep checking. We'll get there. We'll take the draw being down, right? So we just keep doing that. Now, that would lead to nowhere. It would be a draw. So anyway, the first check, instead of going back, he comes up, okay? So that's all. And now what does Morphy do here? He brings the knight to d5. Okay. Now he's threatening f4, right? He's threatening f4. Just to show it. Let's see. I got to see this. I want to see. Because now it opens the light square bishop. See that? Beautiful, right? This guy now is opened up over here. That's the only square for white. Now this guy's opened up. And then you do this, right? If you check. Now if he goes back, right? Now you can do this all day long, right? He comes up. Oh, the bishop protects the mate, folks. See that? All right. So he still gets him like this. And they would check all day long, and you'd get a draw. See that? So, all right, you're fighting for a draw at least. Now, you can't block with the bishop. He loses. He would lose. Should have thought for a second there he could block, but no dice, right? Oh, look at this. So now he comes up. Now he goes, let's see. He goes there. I mean, is it all like before? Yeah, it's a draw, right? They just pull back, and there you go, right? And there you go. You got your draw, your perpetual, or whatever you're going to call this. 3 repetitions, right? All right, so let's go back. We're dancing over here. We're just dancing. All right, so there's the idea, folks. See that? I had to throw in A3 just to show you what Morphy must be going for. I mean, he's down materially. He's trying to at least get the draw at this stage. All right, so you get something like this, you got it. If he comes up, is it all the same? I guess it's all the same, right? There you go. You just get this going now. It's all the same. Now, if he goes here, if he's a dope, and he goes up, look what happens. I think he loses. Look at this, mate. Look at this. It's gonna be rook to h5 mate. He's got a spiteful check. He gives another spiteful check. Right? Oh, he lets the bishop check. Okay. So the king just comes up. Goes there. Rook h5 is going to be mate. And there, it's just wasted move. Look, folks, look. Because the bishop on the diagonal still controls g8. Look at that, huh? Beautiful stuff. All right, I'm glad we came up with that one. Nice. But again, you see, black's really playing for the draw here. If white's dumb enough to come up like I just did, you know, I wanted to see what happens, then he falls for mate. Beautiful. Instant replay. He's even giving white a move here now, but there's nothing he can do. There's no way to stop it. There it is. All right, let's go back. But Morphy's basically playing for the draw. You know, hey, your opponent can blunder into it, right? But there's no A3 by Lowenthal. Here he makes the most of this move, I guess, because it looks like Morphy's fighting for that draw, but here he is. Let's see. He plays pawn up. Okay. He plays pawn up. Now he's got the F2 square to run too. Morphy takes, right? Let's finish this up. Morphy takes en passant. And here come now the knight checks. King comes up. Knight takes pawn. At this point, you could put the analysis in too. I think, yes, white's really winning this now. He's up. He's up big time now. So let's see how it ends here. We got Morphy bringing the rook back. Notice something like this even. White could force a trade of rooks at this point with this move, right? Let's see what's going on. Let's just make sure. he takes. He'd rather even take, bust up these pawns. How about that? All right, anyway, so let's see. What is Morphy brings the rook back. And here comes the other rook comes into the game now. Rook to e1. I guess threatening to take. If you take, maybe threatening to sack the exchange. Yeah, this is what he's threatening. Look, folks. He's threatening to take. King's forced to take back, right? And then you pin that guy. See that? And you're going to lose. You're going to lose that knight. Nothing you can do. All right, so anyway. So that's what this rook move is all about. All right, so he moves the... he checks. King goes back to f2. And now the knight comes swinging over to c3. Look at this. All right, he placed the bishop to d3. And now let's see that he could be ready to trade down, I guess. Takes, he checks. Okay. Plays him here. Let me just see something. Takes there. Oh yeah, because I just moved the pawn, so okay. Let's say I move this pawn, right? What's he gonna? He's gonna pin. All right, he's gonna pin that guy. He's gonna pin him. If I go here, he throws the knight in, fork in the rook and the king. All right, so it just gets worse and worse. So all right, he brings the bishop to d5. Bishop takes bishop pawn. And now, if the king takes, you got the knight fork over here now. See, and you rid the pieces that way. And now with the look, the knight protects the bishop, so you put pressure on him. Black's gonna drop a piece. Nothing you can do. Big deal. You win this pawn, you lose the bishop. Oh, big deal. That's nothing. That's nothing. This fork doesn't mean anything because he's got the checks. He's got the checks, right? All right, so there you go. He's up plus 24 if you didn't notice that one. So anyway, I mean, Morphy's busted at this point. He's busted. So on this, the bishop here, they took the pawn. And Morphy brings the rook back. And now he just swings the other rook over here, threatening a discovered check with the bishop. Bishop takes knight. Rook takes. And that discovery is still... Actually, if you haven't noticed... Let's see. Wait. Let's see what happens. Rook takes... Rook on this move. Rook takes bishop. Morphy resigned. Right? If you haven't noticed... You get check, right? Nowhere to go. Check. Nowhere to go. Mate, right? Because if he abandons the rook, he loses the rook. If he comes all the way up to avoid the checkmate, right? If he comes over here, oh, well, it's still mate. Look at this with the bishop, folks. The bishop supports the rook on h3. So it's mate no matter what. I was going to say he's going to lose. He's going to lose this guy down here. But White's just going for mate. He's not going for rooks at this point. So there you go. There you go. Beautiful game, even though Morphy lost. Can't win them all, folks, right? After this, Morphy resigned. And Lowenthal got a win. All right, so he beat him in this game, game number 30. So there you go, folks. Not the prettiest of games, but hey, it's one in the book. It's got a few interesting lines, right? Morphy trying to fight for the draw with that open G file. Very interesting. You still could take these tactical ideas, even from Morphy's losses. You understand? Because I tell you, they crop up all the time in your own game. The more you know, the more you're going to put them together and blow your opponents off the board. All right, so we'll see you next time with Game 31 coming up. I hope you stay tuned. Until then, have a good night.